we have here the Simone Feb Chablis, and this is one of the absolute quintessential classic oyster wines. Chablis is made from a grape that we all know and love, Chardonnay, but you'll notice that we did not select Kendall Jackson for this pairing, and there's a reason for it. The difference with Chablis really is in the soil. The soils of Chablis are made up of Kimmeridgian clays and limestone, and what that means is that many millions of years ago, Chablis was covered in an ocean, and during that time, seashells, predominantly oyster shells actually, were deposited, and when the ocean disappeared, eventually you had these Kimmeridgian clays that were really rich with sea fossils, so very high in mineral, and that gives Chablis its distinct minerality, and is what makes it pair so wonderfully with shellfish.
Yeah, you
so,
taste it. You get this little element of brininess and tart, lemony flavor in the finish that's going to be a great setup for the raw shellfish.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this wine, the Simone Feb specifically. I think has really nice, almost like lemon custard or lemon cream aromas to it. Sort of a fresh appley character and that nice steely, sort of chalky minerality. So one of my favorite things to do when tasting wine with oysters is actually to smell the oyster first. I think that when you smell an oyster, you really get the essence of fresh ocean aromas, you know. The way that oysters feed is really interesting. They open their shells a little bit, and as the water flows through, they filter out phytoplankton, basically, just small plant matter. So one of the reasons that oysters are so distinct from one area to the next is because they're feeding on very distinct colonies of specific types of algae. So there are many different trains of thought on how you should eat an oyster when it's raw, whether you should just slurp it down without chewing it at all, practically holding your nose in order to not taste it, or whether you should chew it once, chew it twice, or chew it as you would a piece of double mint gum. Myself personally, I think that it's important to get the texture of the oyster. Some are a little bit more firm and meaty than others, and I really like to break that stomach open and taste exactly what the oyster was eating just moments ago. So without further ado. Oysters really do hold a place near and dear to my heart, and these are from Cape Cod, these are from Wellfleet, and they really do remind me of being really young on the beaches of Cape Cod, playing in the waves, getting a big mouth of seawater. And, you know, at the time I didn't think that was a memory I'd probably want to harken back to, but this is phenomenal. So you get that really nice lingering flavor of the oyster, really fresh ocean characteristic, and then to taste it with the wine.
It's a great synergy because the wine is so lemony itself. This complements those briny, earthy flavors. It's perfection. It's like the two are made for each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then there's a really lingering sort of fine, silty chalkiness here that to me is the minerality of the oyster and of the wine just shining through and accentuating each other. So it's a beautiful match.
So what would have been the effect if we had a Kendall Jackson Chardonnay here?
Well, Kendall Jackson Chardonnay I would expect to have a more overt presence of oak, would not have that sort of tart, tangy characteristic nearly as much as the Chablis. So to me, I think that it would honestly emphasize the sort of slightly bitter characteristics of the wine, and I think it would overpower the delicacies of the oysters and of the shellfish.
So the ripeness of the fruit and then the extra oak.
Absolutely.
This is a non-oak.
Absolutely. You've got such a full-bodied wine there that I think it would overpower the delicate oysters and shellfish.
Good, very good. So that's kind of the way we think about it. Pure, clean, right from the sea, with understated, fresh, mineral kinds of wines. And sometimes when we're using a little bit, if we bake these oysters, maybe oysters Rockefeller, maybe that's where we get our oak-aged wines.
Absolutely, absolutely.